guys. Welcome. Happy Wednesday, middle of the week, hump day, so to speak, right before a holiday weekend. So I hope everyone is having a great week. I have got a guest today, and I'm really excited because we are going to talk all about how to take one piece of content and turn it into hundreds, right? So Feli and I actually dropped an episode on the ADHD CEO yesterday, and all about like her experience being just absolutely incredible with repurposing. So before we dive into much, I want to let you introduce yourself, tell everybody, who you are, where you're from, a little bit about your story, and what your expertise is in.
Yeah, so hello. My name is Feli, and I am the owner of a content repurposing agency. So we repurpose content. We take one piece of content, we turn it into as many pieces as possible. But I am from Vancouver, Canada, and I started my business because I hate the snow and I didn't want to live in Canada. And so, yeah, now I live in France with my husband.
Ah, France. Okay, that is on my list, FYI. So maybe one day we'll actually get to meet in person. But I really want to dive into, the truth about content, because content creation, especially for ADHD entrepreneurs, which is my forte here, we tend to spiral at 11 p.m., right? It's like, I've been in Canva all day and I didn't get anything published, or there's three drafts in drafts, but nothing actually published. We have a launch plan in the Google Doc, a voice note in the head, right? But you burn out after 1 week. So I really want to dive into the idea behind, not only what you do, but how would it serve that ADHD entrepreneur?
Yeah. So, something that I said on your podcast, but I'm obviously going to repeat here because we all love it, is that repetition builds reputation. And so, as ADHD entrepreneurs, we don't want to do the same thing again and again, but we do need to repeat ourselves. It's very important as you're building brands, as you're building brand awareness, offer awareness, all of the awareness, you need to just keep repeating yourself again and again and again. And so I find that repurposing keeps your content exciting while still keeping the same message and branding in place so that your awareness can grow.
Yes. And FYI, you guys, like, I wrote down that quote, that during the episode, like while we were recording, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write that down. And then I also wrote it down again. I put it on threads and tag Feli. Like, that is crucial. Repetition builds reputation. And so we talk a lot about, making sure you're saying the same thing over and over in your content, speaking to your ideal client. But I don't think people understand the impact it does have on, like you said, your online reputation and what you're known for, that branding. So, everyone says that repurpose your content. We're not the first people to be on live talking about it. But what does that really mean? Because we talk about on the episode, it's not copy pasting, right? You really did dive into what is the intention and how it's turning one idea into multiple formats, but multiple angles. So, can you kind of give us your take on what exactly repurposing is? Because I think most people that try to execute it don't see a result because they're not doing it correctly with no
Mhm.
intention.
I'm like, let me get nerdy because the etymology of the word repurpose, it means to give new purpose, like create a new purpose for your original content, right? So that's why it's not copy pasting. You have to actually change something about the original piece of content for it to be considered repurposing. Um, wow, I'm drawing a blank. Like, what was the second half of your question?
I am the best at multi stacked questions.
My brain
Okay,
just went boop.
apologies, but you explained to us what repurposing is, but where do you think most people go wrong with it? Can you give us some real life examples of, you know, bad and good?
Bad is the copy pasting, obviously. Bad is also not doing it at all. I would also put using AI for repurposing in the bad category.
Ooh.
And just, I'm not a fan of like AI for content ideas and content writing in general because I feel like it gives you some pretty basic answers, and like, you're not basic. I don't want
Yes,
you to be
yes,
basic. I don't
yes.
want you to act basic. And so if you're repurposing, I want you to look at your own content like it came from your brain. Let's like continue using your brain to come
Right.
up with these new content ideas that are going to keep your content fresh and exciting for your audience. Um,
What is a good example?
a good example, I'm like, thank you for feeding me the question because
I'll
clearly I can't
I'll do
retain
that. I'll do
anything.
that.
A good example of repurposing, I like to talk about repurposing like a waterfall, right? So if you have your podcast at the top, right? It is your top of funnel content. And then you're going to let everything else trickle down, right?
Right.
So podcast is at the top, threads, email, blog, Instagram, TikTok, all of those come
Uh-huh.
from the podcast. And you
Yes.
intentionally create those original podcast episodes knowing that you're going to pull all of the best pieces out of it to be
Yes.
repurposed.
Yes. And you guys, I wanna point out something she just said, a word she just used. She said intentional. Okay. Intentional. So this is something that I talk about quite a bit with people in my membership and also in my academy. But there is strategy and there is strategy with intention. Right? You can have some kind of execution strategy where you're like, I'm gonna comment on 5 reels a day. I'm gonna post twice a day. Okay. That's like a posting schedule. That's not a strategy with intention. And thinking about what is the customer journey and what is the purpose of that content. Is it to sell? Is it to nurture? Is it to grow? Is it to So please hone in. If you don't get anything else out of this live or the episode on the podcast yesterday, please get that one word: intention. Okay. You're going to get tons of nuggets from our podcast episode for sure. So if I'm going to put that plug in now in case you haven't already. We dropped episode 168 yesterday, and you can find it on any platform: Apple, Spotify. I'm drawing blanks, y'all. It's Wednesday. It's halfway through the week. Wednesday. Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio. Doesn't matter where you're listening. You could search the ADHD CEO, or if you're on Facebook or IG right now, you can drop 168 in the comments, all the numbers together, and it'll automatically send it to you. Unfortunately, I cannot automate on, YouTube and LinkedIn and
Yeah.
wherever else we are right now. We're all over the world. But I love that you said that, starting with your primary content. I call it my signature content inside my programs, but that's exactly what I teach, right? And do you think that, or do you recommend that your signature content, your starting point, be a long form so that you can have enough, right? Because the intention is to repurpose.
I do not.
Oh, okay. Look, that's why I bring guests here, guys. That's why I hope you're seeing that, because she and I have already. There's two things that we might, not teach exactly the same. So that's why I love to learn from as well. So what do you recommend your signature content be?
I recommend that you pick the content that you're going to be able to be consistent
Oh
with.
yes, you talked about that on the episode for sure. Okay,
So it doesn't have to be long form. Like if you love creating those graphic carousels for Instagram, like keep
right,
at it.
right.
But if you love talking on a podcast, then go for it.
Okay. And so I know on the episode you said, I think you might have said it a little bit differently. It's like not only what you're going to be consistent at, but ideally what you're best at as well, right? If you're a good
Mhm.
writer, needs to be some kind of written content. If you're good on video, right? Is that ideally your signature content would be what you're best at?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I want to dive into a little bit about why repurposing is ADHD friendly, because of course that's my audience here. And what I see in my programs, my audience, my comments is the burnout, right? The extreme burnout of our brains crave novelty. So we're living in this like creation mode. Okay. And I'm speaking for myself right now, but I know I'm also speaking for a lot of you that are watching or listening or watching this replay, is that I love the idea of creating. It's exciting. It's dopamine, right? So, like building a launch process or building a new program, like that's exciting to me. But then the repetition of conversion might not be. I mean, I love seeing a Stripe notification come through my email all day long, but repurposing, in my opinion, gives you structure and variety. So what are your thoughts on how this can help people with burnout? Because content burnout is real, and depending on when you started in this industry or you started posting content, it was 3 times a day. Now it's less is more. Then it was like shorter is better. Now it's longer form is better. So, like, what are your takes on some of these industry standards that are causing burnout?
First of all, I am like not for the guru, like post 3 times a day, like anything that's unsustainable for you, like don't take it on. 30-day challenges, I will never make it through a 30-day challenge. Not like I no.
Okay, side note. Did you see that I posted this morning about a 30-day challenge? Are you calling me out? Like, are you calling me out right now?
Like, go for it. I like other people love them. I have a friend who does them all the time, like to challenge herself 30 days of reels. I know myself, I will never make it through it. Like I will the second it's a weekend, not doing it. If it's not scheduled, it's not happening.
Yes. Well, and I will say that I love that you just said that, right? It's what you could be consistent with. And that's a
Mhm.
very common question I get. How many times should I be posting a day? And I'm like, whatever you can be consistent with. Because if not, especially with ADHD, once you lose momentum, then you get this executive dysfunction that takes over. You feel bad because you ghosted for a couple days. Then it's harder to come back.
Yeah,
So
the
I do agree
pressure
with
that
that.
we put on ourselves, like, makes it unsustainable in the
I
end.
do agree with that.
But so if you are approaching burnout, if you have ADHD, either or,
Yeah.
or both, then I think repurposing is the best thing you could do for
Yeah.
yourself because it takes that pressure off of having to create new. Like we've talked a lot
Yes.
about like the signature content, the core content, that top of funnel content, but with repurposing, you can remove that from the creation schedule entirely and just repurpose and
Yeah.
only put out repurposed content to sustain you stepping back, you taking the time you need to recover or like
Yeah.
rejuvenate even.
Yes, I totally agree. And you said that, it takes that pressure off to always create new. And in my opinion, it also takes the pressure off to always create on demand, right? Because
Mhm,
one thing I see in my audience and in my students right now is they're creating daily. And I'm going to be real with you guys. I don't have the capacity to create daily. I mean, and I mean, I show up on camera, no makeup. I got no makeup on right now. So if y'all are seeing all my breakouts, whatever. But like I show up the way I want to show up at this point because I've built that confidence. Most people it takes years. It took me years. And so feeling like you always have to be on or create and be on demand, it's exhausting. And I don't want to do it. And I did it for the first few years of my business until I realized like batching's my friend, repurposing's my friend, scheduling's my friend. And I said this yesterday in my stories actually because I had someone that replied to one of my stories and said, is this about me and our conversation yesterday? And so I posted a little story that was like, if you think my content is a passive aggressive, trigger at you, it's not because it's scheduled weeks in advance. So all of it was scheduled before we even had that conversation. And I can't even remember because my ADHD, what we talked about. So FYI, but I love that because scheduling has been amazing for me. Like you said, weekends, you're like, I'm out. I'm not doing that. Right. I want to enjoy my time. So I do think that this is the best format, not only for growth, but for sustainability, right? Because we've seen, and I'm sure you've seen, a lot of creators grow very quickly online, especially over the last 2 years, and then they're just gone one day, just like poof,
mhm.
because they got exhausted and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. They put it down and they gave up on their business because of the exhaustion, because of the pressure and the gurus and all the bad information out there. So one more thing I really want to pick at, that we talked about in the episode was omnipresence, because I know you brought it up on the episode first, and then I've had quite a few people in my programs that don't know what that means. But when you talk about, or when I've talked about it, some of the feedback I've gotten was it almost like overwhelms them, right? It means that being everywhere means doing more. And that's exactly what it doesn't mean. And you teach that in the remix, or you do that for them in the remix. And we'll get to the remix. I promise you guys stick around for that. But Can you talk a little bit about, you know, how your philosophy, I know you shared it on the podcast episode, but how your philosophy helps them build omnipresence without overwhelm?
Yeah, so this comes back to the signature content and building that content cascade so you can trickle down your repurposing across it. But for those of you who aren't familiar, omnipresence is having your presence on multiple channels. So when
Yeah.
we're talking about a marketing omnipresence, we're talking about marketing your business on multiple channels. I would say two or more
Yeah.
already is an omnipresence, but for this sake, we're probably talking like three, four, five, like blog, podcast, email, LinkedIn, uh,
Right.
Instagram threads. You can show up everywhere, and it can get overwhelming very quickly if you're not strategic about it.
Yes.
So this is where choosing that core content, choosing that signature content that's going to be the one you consistently create every week or every day, depending on what type of content it is, and then repurposing from there. And
Yeah.
I don't schedule my threads.
Yeah.
It's like it's like 90% repurposed, but I'm, like, still pulling from them, like, day to day. But I do schedule my LinkedIn posts. I do
Right.
schedule my email that goes out every week. I do schedule my podcast. Like, my podcast is 2 months in advance right now, you know? So it's like you can once you find your rhythm and once you have that content cascade mapped out of like this is going here, this is going here, this is coming from
Right.
that, right? Like once you get all of the the things connected,
Yeah.
then it becomes easier and way less overwhelming to manage showing up on multiple platforms.
Agreed. Agreed. And for those of you that are listening, I highly recommend obviously an omnipresence. That's been a big piece of my strategy. I know that's something you teach, but I also recommend that you have, and Feli, I actually don't know if I asked your opinion on this in the episode, having some kind of software or system to manage it, because from what I've experienced, for me, because of the amount of content that I do create, especially long form, building that omnipresence is not the difficult part. The difficult part is managing comments and DMs or messages or whatever, all the incoming on all of those platforms. So I personally like Matrical. I could see, a lot of DMs in one place. But what is your take on that? Do you have a preference on systems that you use for your content?
I'm so bad because when I schedule, I always schedule in platform.
Okay.
I feel like they've all finally done what I wanted them to, like Instagram and
Yeah.
Threads now let you schedule in platform, which you couldn't do before. Um, and I really only use Instagram DMs because Threads doesn't have DMs,
Right.
emails go to your inbox, right? So I don't have a system like that, but I
Yeah.
do know people who use them and love them because
Yeah.
of everywhere they're showing up.
I prefer Metrical, especially with the analytics tracking it has. The
Mhm.
analytics are all in one place. I have like a dashboard. It's absolutely incredible, and they do have a free plan too. So a lot of my students will start using it with a free plan. But I do schedule certain things in the app as well, because like a reel, if you were to schedule that in Metrical, you can't add audio if it's a B-roll, stuff like that. So there is still a reason for that. But I agree, the platforms have finally all gotten up with the time. So, last thing I want to talk about really quick, and I want to dive into your remix, is the mistakes people are making. And I think we've already touched on this, but I want to kind of end on this because so many people are trying to repurpose and they're not doing it with intention, like we said. So, I feel we've talked about most people do it wrong by, you know, copy pasting, not repurposing at all, not repeating themselves, or showing different angles, because like you said, repetition builds reputation, and it really is about showing different angles of that piece of content. So what platform do you feel most people are stuck on right now when it comes to repurposing mistakes?
I would say that email and blogs get, like, the worst of it.
Yeah. Okay.
I
We don't
I
get enough
feel
threads,
like
huh?
I feel like especially with, AI,
Yeah.
I feel like that people are taking transcripts and trying to turn them into blogs, and they just end up losing your voice, they end up generic, they end up not making sense or, like, just way too long-winded, never getting to the point. And same with, like, emails, I feel like even if you're, like, not copy pasting your caption directly, but you're putting it in AI to be like, "Turn this into an email," it
Right.
misses that the concept that I, like, use is angles,
Yeah.
right? So it misses the point of this was a reel and it's becoming an email. Email is for your warmest audience.
Right.
Email is for the people that know you, probably know your offers, so we don't need the scroll stopping hook on
Right.
email. We need to speak directly to the ideal client and a struggle they're having or a problem they're having or desire they wanna choose, right? And so that's where I feel like those 2 platforms, they just get I think people try to m do the content lazy on them,
Mhm.
and then it doesn't work,
It
and then
doesn't
they
work.
think
Right.
the platform doesn't work, but it's the content they're putting on the platform that's not working.
Right. And then you're putting your energy into something that's not bringing a result to begin with. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that. And I agree. I think emails a lot of times are, and I have personally worked on like getting better with my emails. Obviously during a launch of something, they're going to be a little bit different, but those again are your most intimate pieces of content. They should be more like, writing a letter to a friend kind of thing. So again, going back to intention. So let's talk about what it looks like to get support from you with the remix as we kind of wrap up today. So your remix service, you give 100 content ideas, right? So can you walk us through how the remix works and how they can, obviously, for those of you that are listening, you can go to the show notes of the episode and get access to Feli's remix, or you can, if you're on Facebook or IG, you can drop remix, all one word, in the comments, and we'll make sure that you can get access to that as well. But can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so the remix is what I call a taste of repurposing. You send us 10 links to your existing content, and we send you 100 custom content ideas, all inside of an Airtable base for you to walk away and create more content in 1 month than you did in the last quarter.
Yeah.
So basically, we take your content, you tell us what platforms you're showing up on, you tell us what platforms you want to show up on, what offers you're selling, and who you're speaking to.
Okay.
From there, we take the content that you sent us and pull out 10 ideas per piece of content
Nice.
to be able to give you, like, full prompts, like, "Talk about this," like, "Make a slide about this," and then you get to create.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what results have people seen from this? I'm sure it's on the sales page. They can also look at that too because I read some of them. But like, what are you seeing? What type of creators are using this? I'm sure you have all types of creators. And what kind of results are they seeing? Are they growing on different platforms, or are they finally feeling confident in their creation? Probably both.
I feel like the biggest result that I hear from my clients, and it's funny we're talking about this because I want to implement a, like, month later feedback form because I currently
Yeah.
have, like, a "Here's your remix, like, what did you think?" form. But so the biggest result I generally get is, like, I don't have to think anymore to
Yes.
create.
Right.
Like, taking the pressure off of, like, coming up with content ideas. But we get a lot of podcasters, a lot of, actually we've had quite a few people who have memberships that have us go into their membership content or, like, modules in a course instead of existing, like, marketing content.
Yeah.
And I've had a few authors who, like, have their business books, like, I like the unconventional
Yeah.
content.
Well,
Um
I definitely have a note of that as well because my first book is launching April 30th, but it's actually about being an autism mom. It's not a business book. It's more of a guide for, moms that just got a child diagnosed, and it's for my nonprofit. But my business book is launching in June. So I thought that myself. I was like, this has got to be like years worth of content right here.
Mhm.
Like, how do I, so the remix it
Exactly.
is. But how fast will they get feedback from you? It's 7 days, right? Within 7 days?
Mhm, yeah, so
Okay.
once the onboarding form is received, it's delivered within 7 days.
In 7 days. 100 ideas. Okay. And let's just say, even if you post once per day, that's 3 months worth of content for those that are posting every single day. So
Yeah, and
the
it
investment
becomes
alone is
and
insane.
it becomes so much more, right? Like, I just did an interview with someone, like a case study interview with someone who had done a remix, and she was saying, like, a year later, she's still using it because I wrote the idea for a reel. She took that idea and turned it into a carousel and then a thread, and then
Right.
the blog post got broken down into 4 different emails and just reusing the ideas. Like, one time you'll be like, "Okay, I wanna write it from this angle, but I have another thought of how I could approach the same idea for a
Yeah.
different platform," and just it becomes so much more than the 100 ideas that it
I
starts
love it.
with.
I love it. So when they submit their 10 links and you give them the ideas back, you give them ideas in the same format as they sent it to you, or how does that work? So
What do
like
you
if I
mean?
send you 10 links to reels,
Mhm.
the ideas you send back, will they be real ideas, or are they just omnipresent ideas where you can use this across the board?
You tell me what platforms you want them for.
Nice.
So you could
Nice.
say, "I want podcast ideas, I want blog post ideas, I want reel ideas, I want carousels, I want captions for LinkedIn or for Instagram or for Facebook," right? So you'll tell me what platforms you want them for, and I will create for those
I love it.
platforms.
I love it. All right, you guys. So, with that being said, if you haven't already, again, plugged into our podcast episode, I interviewed Feli on the podcast that went live yesterday. You can search the ADHD CEO on your favorite podcast platform. If you're on IG or Facebook, again, you can drop 168 in the comments. We'll get you the direct link to listen in. And then in the show notes, you can find information on Feli's Remax, because I want you to think right now, how much easier would your life be if a week from now you had 100 custom, not ChatGPT, custom content ideas to you and your audience that you could execute for the next 3 months? Like, not having to think sounds amazing.
Right?
Amazing. So I hope you all plug into the episode. Feli, thank you so much for being here with me today. I enjoyed our conversation on the podcast, and then just wanted to bring you online to talk a little bit more about it, because again, this is something that the burnout is something I see a lot. And there are solutions to it. Repurposing is one of the biggest ones, and most people are doing it wrong. So all right. With that being said, until next time, guys, make it simple, make it social, make it awesome. Bye, everyone. All right. Let me get everything turned off really